Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 11-game Major League Baseball slate at 7 p.m. Eastern. We do have some weather concerns on this slate with the Houston-New York Yankee game, the Kansas City Royals-Philadelphia game, and the Toronto-Boston game. This slate is pretty rough, so let's go ahead and get into it, though. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, drop a comment below with your home run calls today. Let's go ahead and get into this slate here. Luis Castillo for the Mariners is in play today. He said he is in play for a 20 to 30 fantasy point game here. He's pitched well lately with 4 20 fantasy point games the last 5. He's been mostly good throughout the year, though, and he has potential to get a win here as well. He does have good K rate, and he's had 2 games against the Angels this season where he had 22 and 26 fantasy points, and he had 16 strikeouts in those 2 games as well. So combined, so he's got a decent situation here, though he's fairly expensive. Nola for Philly is also in play. This matchup does give him some good upside. I really do like Philadelphia today. In general, the matchup gives him the nice upside. He's been very boom or bust though lately. He does carry some risk given that he's given up some earned runs lately. He had 14 earned runs the last 4 games, so that is a bit of a concern. But he still has good upside, and even in those 4 games, he's had 2 over 20 fantasy points. Excuse me. So he's definitely capable of a solid game, and he's got a great matchup. Merrill Kelly for Arizona is also in play. He has 30 fantasy point upside. He's only had 1 over 20 fantasy points the last 6 games. That said, his floor isn't that bad, and he can have good strikeout games, and Minnesota does tend to be a team that you can get a good K rate against. He's been very close on having, 15 to 20 fantasy point games a lot, so I do think he's got some viability today, and he has had somewhat of a tough schedule lately, so I do think he's viable on the slate. Then we'll look at Darvish. Now, he is facing the Dodgers, so this is a very tough matchup for him. But he's been somewhat inconsistent. But in 3 of the last 4 games versus Philadelphia, Toronto, and Texas, he's had 3 games over all 3 of those teams over 27 fantasy points. He had 9, 7, and 9 strikeouts in those 3 games as well. And his floor, though, is really low, as he had a bad game against Pittsburgh 2 games ago where he gave up 7 earned runs. So his floor is as high as anybody's, but it's also as low as anybody's on this particular slate. So there's good contrarian play, but he's in the toughest matchup of all of them. But he's had 3 good games against really good teams. So make that make sense. Then we'll look at Miller for the Dodgers. He's got some interesting upside here against San Diego. At 15 to 18 fantasy point game is probably where I think he's going to hit. He's had 3 wins the last 5 games, but he's not getting over 20 fantasy points in many games, as he doesn't have the strikeout rate that some of the other pitchers do sometimes. But he is capable. It's just he's sometimes giving up a few too many hits and stuff. So he is, though, capable in this game, and San Diego tends to be pretty streaky this season. Then we'll look at Creamer for Baltimore. Now, he's in an interesting spot here. He's also in the 15 fantasy point range. He's got a tough match against the Mets, and I do like some of the bats for the Mets. But he does have a little bit of upside, as he has been pretty decent in some games, and he has really good upside. He's got as much upside as anybody, but he's in a tough situation here. So he's kind of a Hail Mary play, I think, on this slate. And then Clevenger for the White Sox. Now, he's high risk, high reward here. The downside with Cleveland is they don't strike out a lot, but he has faced them twice and scored 16 and 20 fantasy points. I think that's about in his range again. He hasn't been giving up a ton of earned runs lately, but of course he doesn't tend to pitch a ton of innings, so that is a concern with the low strikeout rate. But he's also just not giving up a lot of hits or anything either. So he is interesting. He's high risk, high reward, but he's viable on the slate. Moving to our catchers, our bets here. So I do have 3 core plays in Mitch Garver, Mountcastle, and Tim Anderson. So I will get into those when I get through those positions. So at at catcher, we're gonna start with JT Realmuto for Philly. I really do like Philly today, and the stack is definitely in potential today. He's got some decent home run potential. He's hit the ball decently well throughout with home run upside most of the season. Though he hasn't hit the ball particularly great lately, he has good potential, and I do think he's a viable option, though he's fairly expensive today. Cal Raleigh is also in play for Seattle. Now, he does face Detmers, who can be a tough matchup sometimes, but he's hitting the ball over 300 for the last 10 games. Finally seems like he's starting to hit the ball well. He's also got some home run potential. I do like his upside here, but he's high risk with the matchup he's in. Then we'll look at Alvarez for the Mets. I also like the Mets decently today, though he has been inconsistent over the last 10 games or so. He has home run potential, and that's really what gets him in play. His price has come up a little bit though, so that is a concern. But he is viable at this price range, and he's still very rosterable. And then Garver for Texas, he's in play today as he's hit the ball extremely well lately with 3 home runs the last 10 games. He hasn't played a ton of games this year, but when he does play, he's always in play as a potential home run option, and he's hitting pretty solidly. So I do like his upside. He's had I think 5 or 6 straight games with hits, so I think he's got good potential in this matchup. I do like his home run metrics as well. Maybe in the first base, we're going to start with Ohtani now. Ohtani did have a finger issue yesterday, but then he, of course, hit a home run. So I think he's more than capable of having a good batting day, even though he's maybe going to skip a start with his pitching. I don't know if he does or not, but it does look like he could be not pitching in the next start, but he is batting probably today, so I expect him to have a good opportunity to have a big time game, which he's just more than capable of. Bryce Harper is also in play for Philly, though he is pretty expensive today. He's been inconsistent recently, but he's finally starting to hit the ball better in the last 5 or 6 games, so I do like his upside, and he does draw home run potential, though he hasn't hit them this season like we expected. Dan Vogelbach is also in play for the Mets. He has hit the ball decently well recently, and he's also got some home run upside. He does tend to be a boomer bust play, but he is dirt cheap, so that does help you pay up for other options, and he has some nice utility from that perspective. Ryan Mountcastle has absolutely been just crushing the ball lately with a 531 average over the last 10 games. That's just absolutely crazy. He's had 5 straight games over 14 fantasy points, and he's only had 1 home run in that stretch. He's also managed to get a stolen base or 2 recently, so he is capable, though he is in a pretty good spot, and he is nice and cheap as well. So I really do like the matchup and his situation. Josh Naylor is also in play at this position. Now, he is day-to-day, so I would say that he has some potential to play today, but I'm not sure if he will or not. If he does play, though, he'll be in play as he's hit the ball pretty well recently, has some home run upside, and even some low-end stolen base potential as he had one the other day. Maybe in second base, we'll look at Altuve for Houston. Now, he's been pretty good since he's been back from injury. He hasn't played a ton of games this season, but he does draw home run potential. He also draws stolen base potential, and he is scoring fantasy points in bunches. He's had a lot of good games even without home runs, so I do like his upside, though he is fairly expensive today. Marcus Semien is also in play for Texas. Now, he has hit the ball very well recently with a 350 batting average over the last 10 games. He draws really good metrics here, and he's had 2 home runs in the last 2 games, so he has really good upside, though he is expensive. Then we're going to look at Whit Merrifield for Toronto. Now, he is a little bit risky today, but he's hit the ball extremely well with a 356 batting average and averaging over 10 fantasy points a game lately. He's still a little bit boomer bust, but he's had a lot of good games, and so he does draw some good potential, though his upside is a little bit lower than some of the other bats on the slate. Jeff McNeil actually falls in a similar position where his upside is a little bit lower despite having a good batting average recently. He doesn't have a ton of home run potential, but he does have good hitting potential, and a 7 to 10 fantasy point game is not out of the question for him. This position is somewhat weak today, though. Maybe in the third base, we'll look at Rafael Devers for Boston. I really do like his upside. He's hitting the ball pretty well now. He really struggled throughout the season, but he's really improved recently. He also draws really good, just really top-tier home run metrics today. He is facing Manoah, too, who's been very inconsistent this season. So I do like Devers a lot, and he draws some nice upside. Boston is kind of a nice contrarian stack as well. Jose Ramirez has had 4 home runs the last 10 games, and he's hitting the ball very well in that stretch, though he has been somewhat inconsistent throughout the year. He does draw good metrics for home runs in this particular matchup. Then we'll look at Josh Jung, who has played pretty solid but inconsistent throughout the season. He has a nice upside today, though. He draws good upside. He's been good in the last series against the White Sox, and he managed to score fantasy points in different ways, so though he is fairly expensive now, so that makes it a little bit harder to roster him, he's definitely in play on this particular slate. Alex Bregman also in play, also a little bit overpriced, but he draws good metrics here. He's also hitting the ball well, though he's not quite as good or safe as some of the other guys I already mentioned at this position. I do think Devers is probably the best option at this position, but Bregman's a good contrarian play, especially if you go with a low-end Houston stack. Then we'll look at shortstop and look at Francisco Lindor for the Mets. He's hitting the ball very well. He tends to get streaky because he has had some really bad stretches this season. But right now he's hitting well. He's had 3 or 4 20 fantasy point games over the last 10 games. I do like his potential here, though he is expensive on the slate. Tim Anderson is a core play for me. He's hit the ball very well recently, which is surprising since he's been pretty much in a slump all season long. But he's finally starting to hit the ball decently well, and he's even getting some stolen bases, which is nice. So he does draw good metrics here. He hit his first home run the other day, and he's in play again today as a good option. As long as he's hitting the ball well, he's going to be somebody I'm going to consider. And then Ezekiel Duran for Texas also in play today. I really do like Texas stacks today as well, and he's nice and cheap. Though he has been inconsistent throughout the year, he has some home run upside in this matchup. Make sure he draws a start though, because he's not started every game recently. Maybe the outfield. Otani can also play in the outfield. We had him at first base as well. Kyle Schwarber is also in play, and I really did consider making him a core play, but the risk with him is he's totally just a home run or best option. But the home run metrics for him are really good today, so I do like his upside, but he is high risk, high reward. Aaron Judge is also in play today. Now, he has been back from injury for a couple games, and while he has been somewhat inconsistent, he still keeps that home run upside, and he's got a really good matchup here against Houston today, so I do think he's viable against a kind of a shaky pitcher, so I think he's got that potential to score that today. That said, Yordan Alvarez has hit the ball very well lately with a 333 average over the last 10 games. He's had a lot of games in a row now with hits, which is definitely giving him some advantage. I do like his upside, though he does tend to feel a little bit risky most days. He's been hitting better and better recently, so I think he draws him some good potential here. Then we're going to look at Duran for Boston. Now, I do like a Boston stack, though they are a little bit risky today because Manoah has been bad this season, but he's had a couple good games lately. I still think that this team is a stackable team, especially with their price ranges being pretty reasonable. And Duran is in play as he has hit the ball very well recently with almost 300 average, and he's got some home run upside as well. So I do like his potential here. Then we'll look at Yoshida for Boston. He has been pretty consistent throughout the season, though his batting average has dropped off recently. He still draws good metrics. He's been getting some home runs as well, and he does make good contact. So it's just a matter of getting the ball in the right places to pay off. Then we'll look at Toscar Hernandez, whose metrics really pop up the page to me today. Again, he's very similar to Schwarber in that he's kind of a boom and bust guy, where he's just like a home run or nothing. But he has hit the ball actually fairly in several games in a row. I think 5 or 6 games in a row here. But he is striking out a lot, and so that is a concern. And he does have home run potential, but he's not scoring a ton of fantasy points when he doesn't hit the home run. So you do need him to hit the home run to pay off here. Anthony Santander also in play for Baltimore. He's been somewhat inconsistent throughout the season, but he does draw good metrics for this game. He has some home run upside. He tends to be a bit of a boom or bust option, especially lately, but he is having some good games, so it's just a matter of not striking out, which he does tend to do. Then we'll look at Verdugo for Boston. Sorry for butchering your name, but he has been hitting inconsistent throughout the season, but he does draw good metrics here, and if you go with the Boston stack, he's definitely somebody that's getting on base a lot, and so if he can sneak a home run around, then he's definitely capable of a good game here. I do have 3 sub $3,000 plays to also think about. Dan Vogelbach for the Mets, then Robbie Grossman for Texas, and Brandon Marsh for Philadelphia, all in play as cheap options on the slate. With that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.